We've noticed that as we live there. We go to the grocery store and we can no longer buy Finnish milk or European cheese. Our currency goes a little bit further. The ruble exchange rate was 31 to the dollar when we arrived. It's now about 39 or 40 to the dollar. It's estimated in The Economist I was reading that before the end of this year, or by the end of this year, something between 120 and 150 billion US in capital will have drained from the country of Russia alone. There are extraordinary things happening. At the very least, whether you believe we are entering a new Cold War phase or tension phase, or the lowest point in Western-Eastern relations in the last 23 years, there is something fundamental happening. There are some shifts ongoing. And the primary question that I receive regularly is, how is the church being affected? I'm going to be very honest with you. I think by and large, very little. Business as usual is continuing. Missionaries are present. Buildings are being purchased. Visas are being received. The work of the Lord is continuing forward. Now that does not mean, however, that there aren't some difficulties. Let me tell you specifically about one in Crimea. Last week, and by the way, I want to recognize these individuals. They're here not with the Office of General Counsel. They're here as members of the Moscow chapter of the J. Reuben Clark Law Society. Our legal coordinator, Vladimir Michalov. Vladimir, stand up, please. Vladimir has been working for the church for a long time. He's a lawyer from Ukraine, but Russian background. We have our differences once in a while. We'll talk about the events that are happening in the world, and we will sometimes have different views, but the thing that unites us, of course, is that first and foremost, we are members of the kingdom of God. Also present here is Denis Smogluk, who just received his second law degree. He is our office assistant. These two brethren are dear friends, and that's our whole office, basically, other than we have one other independent contractor, Alexander Gasatov, and then we're waiting for the next assistant area legal counsel to come to our area, hopefully within the next month or two. Last week, I was on the phone with legal counsel in Moscow, Kyiv, Ukraine, and Crimea. I will call it Crimea. I'm not making a political statement. As a part of the Russian Federation, or still part of the country of Ukraine. But in each of these three places, we had tied in local counsel. We had, at the time of the taking over by the Russian Federation in early March, and the vote shortly thereafter to annex Crimea as part of the Russian Federation, we had 23 missionaries, 4 congregations, 3 church legal entities, some rental property. And we have been dealing ever since, and it's now October, with how to legalize our status now under this new regime, this new change. De facto, Crimea is part of Russia. De jure, under international law, it is not. How do we transfer buildings? How do we set up new legal entities that under Ukrainian law would deem to be illegal and fraternizing with the occupying forces, the enemy, and establishing the church, re-establishing the church in Crimea under Russian law? We're not finished yet with that process. We're still working on it. But it's extraordinarily interesting, and I had the sense that what we were doing in that call was participating in some grand geopolitical discussion where some very strong-feeling Ukrainians and very strong-feeling Russians and some Crimeans caught in the middle were trying to work out on behalf of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints how we continue with business as usual. It was extraordinarily powerful to me. Let me share one other experience with you, if I might. I'll throw in one other little thing here. With all of the tensions that have been going on in our part of the world, our missionaries, as a result, have started to experience, or have been experiencing over the last primarily 10 months or so, some increased what we call missionary incidents. They get punched. They have a knife thrown at them. Somebody's drunk with vodka and starts to yell at them really badly. Here's a report that came from just a week ago from St. Petersburg. The elders were walking down the street. They noticed 4 or 5 drunk men walking towards them. When they reached the men stopped. They took their pens and demanded one of the missionaries' watches, but he refused. Then the men started to scream at the missionaries. The elders ran and found some people going into their house and asked if they could go in with them for safety. The people invited them in until these drunk men had left and it had become safe again. This is the clincher. They now have a return appointment with the family for a lesson. I just had to throw that in. So as I say, I've been there for 15 months or so with my family. We brought 4 of our 6 children. It's been a thrilling experience. They've adjusted so well. They go to an extraordinary school. We have a wonderful board. I'm currently teaching early morning seminary, which means I have an hour less in the day to actually work. I'm still waking up at the same time at 5:30, but I have to teach 4 kids, one of them my own, from 6:30 to 7:15, and then rush to the office. There's a lot to do. Every day seems a bit of a challenge, and I'm learning a lot. And I must say, if anything, for Brent Belnap personally, this is becoming an extremely poignant, refining experience for me in ways that I never imagined. And there can be no amount of money that could pay for this process. So, less than 2 months after we had arrived as a family, we received notice that auditors, investigators from the Ministry of the Interior, the Ministry of Justice, the FSB, i.e. the successor to the KGB, and the local police were coming to our area administrative offices to conduct an audit, a surprise audit, based on a complaint received by the Ministry of Interior's Department of Extremist Affairs that the Book of Mormon advocates hatred, racial strife, and religious superiority. We immediately went into overdrive because the consequences of running afoul of the Russian law that declares material as being extremist is that the Book of Mormon, as a consequence, could be banned, meaning it could be confiscated from the 22,000 members of the church currently in Russia, and the sponsoring organization that is its importer or publisher could be shut down. We thought of everything that we possibly could do to prove that the Book of Mormon has a presence in Russia of long history, going back to the copy of the Book of Mormon that Brigham Young's daughter sent to Leo Tolstoy in the 19th century, to a rough translation that was done in the 1920s, to a 1980 publication that was done in the United States, to subsequent editions in Germany, including one in 1993 that was printed in Russia itself under current Russian law, to show that the Book of Mormon is not an extremist material. You see, if you get labeled an extremist publication, you immediately go on to, at a local level, you